Hey now.
Oh yeah, look at my life. Hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road. Oh yeah, look at my life. Hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Hey now! How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Scott Box After 9. It is a listener DMs episode, and I'm going to get to that coming up in just a few minutes. Before I do, a couple of thoughts here as I record, and I'm coming to you today from my home studio. Just like I used to do when I first launched this pod, I took the day off from my radio show. We're getting ready for a big ratings period, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to rest up a little bit and make sure I am at my best when business-wise it counts the most. And if you haven't heard me on the radio, across Southern Ontario, I'm on Light 92.1 FM. It's basically an easy listening station, bit of a throwback vibe. In fact, vibe is a good way to describe it because generally the music is fairly light. And you know what? There's no shortage of places to go and get hip-hop and top 40 and screaming rock music, but there's not as many places to get some nice, easy listening music. So if you're in Southern Ontario and you're looking for a nice alternative to what else is out there, check out 92.1 FM. Light 92 in the morning. I will be back on Monday. I've also got a Toronto Rock game tonight. And if you haven't been to a Toronto Rock game, let me just say it is an incredible experience. Live sports at its best, priced for families. It's reasonable to take a family of 4 to a game, and it really is good excitement and entertainment. Tonight, we are taking on the Colorado Mammoth. That should be a fun game. Next week, it's a game against Buffalo. And that's a rivalry game. In fact, TD Coliseum in Hamilton may be completely sold out for that game because a lot of folks come up from Western New York for that game annually. So if you're looking to check out a rock game, next Saturday is going to be a great one in Hamilton. I'm getting ready right now for the men's semifinal at the Winter Olympics. It's just been announced as I sat down to record. Sidney Crosby is out for this game. Unfortunate. I hope he's okay. I hope this isn't a long-lasting injury and he's back on the ice soon. But the good news is we do have a great replacement for captain. His name is Connor McDavid. He will be wearing the C today, and I think that is great for Connor because he's a fantastic player, a great representative of Canada, and go Canada, go. Love to see us win a gold here or at least make it to the gold game, likely against the Americans on Sunday. When it comes to the women's team, I mean, you can't go any further than how far they went yesterday. They were up against adversity, an American team that had given up only one goal in the entire tournament heading into that game, and Canada pushed them right to the limit. Overtime. Heartbreaking way to lose. And I know that the players on that team are going to be asking themselves, what else could we have done? Could we have done anything different? They're going to second guess. They're going to overanalyze. And to me, just leave it. It's an accomplishment to win silver, too. It is. And you know what? The Canadian team left it all on the ice. They put out their best effort, and we can be proud of that. You know, it's not always about winning. Sometimes it's about the effort you show, and it's about the dignity that you hold in losing. And I have nothing bad to say about the Canadian women's team. A fine effort, silver medalists. Nobody can ever take that away. I know gold would have been nice, but it just wasn't meant to be this time around. 4 years to prepare for the next round. And with that said, let's get into the listener DMs. Thank you to everybody who listened to an episode this week, heard something that they felt strongly about, and then took that extra step and slid into my DMs to let me know what's on their mind. I appreciate that a lot. You, the audience, are a big part of Scott Fox After 9. I mean, I do the pod every day, but you listening, sharing it, and things like that, it really is important to me and the growth of the pod because I think we're providing a valuable service here. Information that you're not getting from the mainstream media and a slightly different narrative. In some cases, sometimes it's a big difference in narrative, but either way, that is a difference from what you get from the mainstream media, who is fully subsidized in a lot of ways by our government. I don't take any government funding. I just do this every day to try and make Canada a better place. So thank you for taking the time to slide into my DMs. Let's go through them now. I've got quite a few, so let's dive in. This one off the top from Jana, and I hope I'm saying that right. Hey, Scott, just listening to today's podcast, and I have to correct you on something. It's Czech Republic. Yes, the name has been changed, mostly for sports, but any Czech person I know, including myself, hates the name Czechia. It's Czech Republic. Smiley face. Hey, Jana, I didn't know that. In fact, I'm having a hard time keeping track of countries in Europe changing their name. But either way, this is good information. I didn't realize that Czech people prefer Czech Republic to Czechia. Either way, I'll try and keep that in mind for future episodes. Can't promise I'm going to say it that way. As far as I know, Czechia is the correct current way to say it, but I certainly respect your heritage, and I'll try and be mindful of that. Next message. We're going to do a couple of them here related to Matt Genereux, the floor crosser who just left the Conservative Party to join the Liberals. This is from Ryan. Hey, Scott, listening to the pod, and I'm confused right off the start. So Matt Genereux stepped down from his role in the fall to spend time with his family. I thought that meant he quit his job. How does he now unquit and be back in the same role to then cross the floor? Or does step down in politics mean he's not going to do his job for a while, but somehow keep the job and his salary? I'm very confused. Hopefully you can clarify for me. Ryan, that's a hell of a message. Matt Genereux, what a situation, right? This guy said he was going to quit. He did not show up for work in months. He still spent a lot of money on the expense account, nearest I can tell, and now all of a sudden he is unquitting and crossing the floor, betraying his constituents. I'm told, and I don't know this for fact, but I'm told by someone who's pretty well versed in the processes of Parliament that your resignation isn't actually official until you submit it to the Speaker. And what Matt here did was announce he was resigning in the spring, but when it came time to submit his resignation, he never actually did it. I think there's a lot of questions to be asked here about Matt Genereux and what went down, and with all the floor crossers. It's dirty, it's shady. And each one seems to get more and more shady. Hey, listen, if an MP wants to cross the floor, that's their prerogative. They should be following the will of their constituents. And the best way to do that would be to go back to the constituents and ask them for a new mandate, have a by-election, run under the other party's banner, and see if the electorate agrees with that decision. And I know that politicians aren't going to do it because they don't want to lose. Right now, Matt here's got a safe job for a while, and he's probably going to get a safe riding out in British Columbia in the next election. That's likely what he was promised, because I'm led to believe he doesn't actually even live in his riding, which is also kind of a strange thing. Not impossible to serve your riding when you don't live in it, but it's certainly not ideal when you're in another province. You know what I mean? Anyway, the Matt Genereux situation, I know that people find it frustrating. I think it's just indicative of where we're at. Democracy seems to be basically under assault. Traditional things that we'd all come to know and understand, like our vote counts, we select a government, and when we've had enough of them, we replace them with a different government. That seems to be out the window. We've got parties here that are playing to win, and they think power is the ultimate prize, and they're going to do anything they can to keep it, not the least of which is the salary and all the perks that go with it. Ryan, great message. I appreciate that. Next message. This one is from Alex. Hey, Scott, Mario for the North seems to be implying that Matt Genereux was having an affair. That would make the leave my family alone request make a little more sense. There is a little more to this message, but I'm not going to read the rest of it because it seems to engage in a bit of speculation about what Matt was up to. Alex, listen, thank you for the note, but I want to make a point here on this. Mario for the North is a conservative influencer and an exceptionally nice guy. He's also very intelligent. I've had conversations with Mario a number of times, and I really do like him. He also lives in Burlington like I do, although we don't typically roll in the same circles. I know that Mario has floated the idea online that there's something more to the Matt Genereux and family story. I'm not going to engage in that. I'm really not. Mario can do whatever he wants. I'll trust his judgment in that he knows what he's doing there, but I just don't think it's any of our business what goes on in politicians' bedrooms. Assuming it's consensual and legal, that's the extent of it. I don't need to know any more about what these people do in their personal lives. I think it's none of my business. And in turn, I think it's none of their business what goes on in my bedroom or your bedroom or anyone else's. I'd really like people to not get too fixated on that. What Matt did, I think, was despicable. Matt the Rat sold out his constituents, and I think that that's the important part here. The reasons behind it, if it was a family thing or maybe there was some infidelity, I don't know. And to me, that doesn't matter. I just want our politicians to spend our money appropriately, to make the best decisions they can for our country, and be the end of it. I don't need to know what goes on in their personal life, and nor do I care. To me, they've got a job to do, and I expect that they're doing it. And what they do on their own time, none of my business, and I'm content to leave it at that. But thank you for that. If you want to follow Mario, I don't know what he's planning to unveil, if anything, but Mario for the North, and that's the number 4 if you want to follow him online. Again, very good guy. I'm just not going to take the bait on this particular topic because I find that kind of dirty. It's the worst of politics. You made an indiscretion in your personal life, and I'm going to exploit it. I don't think that that's fair, and I don't think that that's what we expect from our politicians either. This one is from Jordan. Scott, with today's episode about Hillary Clinton, just remember, she deleted tens of thousands of emails. It was a whole big scandal. She removed evidence and is now claiming she and her husband had no involvement with Epstein. Her husband is literally in hot tubs with pools with minors. They have photos of him in the Jeffrey Epstein files. It's also interesting the names like Jay-Z were on the list. There's not a lot of coverage about that, even though it explicitly says Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein were sexually assaulting a young girl. Every time there's a new story about that in the media, I wonder what's going on here and why isn't this being covered? Beyonce has been posting pictures on Instagram. People are saying there's something up with that. They're trying to use each other to create some buzz and get the heat off of Jay-Z. Jordan, thank you. The Jay-Z stuff, I haven't heard enough about it. I know that he is in the files, and what they have suggested that Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein and people like that did is pretty bad. Jay-Z would be right up at the top of the food chain here as far as celebrities going down over the Epstein files. I don't know if Jay-Z did anything or not. I'm not going to accuse him of doing anything, even though I've read some pretty unsavory stuff in the Epstein files about him. At the moment, I just want justice. And if justice needs to be done through a courtroom, then get it into the courts. Make some arrests, and let's get people in front of judges and under oath, and let's hear what they have to say. I'm not ready to condemn anybody necessarily yet, although there's certainly enough evidence against Bill and Hillary Clinton, against Prince Andrew. Those three actually, I think are right at the top of the food chain. And I think in a lot of ways, they were organizing some of the horrible things that have been happening. That's my opinion. That's my assessment based on what I've read so far. Some smaller fish like Jay-Z, I don't know. I just want to make sure that people who did bad things are held accountable for the bad things they've done. And that includes Jay-Z. A lot of artists have already been canceled, like R. Kelly, like Diddy, and the list goes on and on and on. Even at the radio station I work at, we've pulled music from artists that have had some pretty serious accusations against them. If we started pulling every artist that's got an accusation in the Epstein files, we would barely have music to play. Hollywood is seriously implicated in the Epstein stuff. And by the way, it's not just Epstein. There were other rings similar to the one that Epstein was running that were happening all around the world. Hollywood is a cesspool of disgustingness. When the time comes and when the evidence is there, I'm sure that these people are going to be held accountable. But right now, I just don't know that there's enough there. Anyway, thank you, Jordan. I appreciate this very much. I'm going to move on. This one, Scott, 45 years old, wife and kids, born and raised here. We both have good paying jobs and can't keep up. It's sad to think we may have to sell things and we may have to go elsewhere to call home. Thank you for being the voice of us little guys. You truly do make an impact on us. Man, that's sad. First off, I appreciate that. I'm sorry to hear you're in that situation, but I'm here to tell you, you are far from alone. There are so many people that are struggling right now, and it's just the middle class. The middle class has been excluded from just about every relief program. They're being used as an ATM by our elected individuals, and nobody seems to understand that the middle class is maxed out. We have no more money to give. We're struggling, and our government doesn't seem to care. And you know what bothers me even more is when the government announces some temporary measure, like this little GST rebate. Those who have think, oh, okay, great. They're good now. We've done it. We can sleep well at night knowing the middle class is fine. But people in the middle class know that is far from sufficient. We need more. We need politicians who care. We need people who can actually relate to the middle class. Imagine that if the middle class actually had a member of the middle class representing them in government. That's going to be part of my goal this year. We need a voice. We need somebody who gets it, and we need people who understand. So thank you for that note. I I lose sleep over notes like this at night, to be honest with you. But again, just know you're not alone. The fact that you may have to move elsewhere, incredibly sad that it's come to that, but there's a lot of people thinking that. Don't be afraid to make the best choice for you and your family. That's all I can advise you to do. And take care of yourself, too. When you're struggling, it's easy to think it's just you. And again, I want to assure you it's not. I get messages like this multiple times a day. Sometimes they're new listeners. Sometimes they're longtime listeners. Every single one of them has the same story. I'm doing it right. I'm working my butt off, and I just cannot get ahead. Well, actually, it used to be I can't get ahead. Now it's I can't even keep up. And that's really sad for a G7 country and one of the most advanced industrial nations in the world. Again, I'm thinking about you. Thanks for that note. This one up from John. Scott, love the pod, longtime listener. I was wondering if you would ever have your good buddy from the old station, Dave Blizzard, on the podcast. The Friday pods you used to do were always fun back in the day when you were just shooting the shit. Okay, yeah, John, thank you for that note. Just so everybody knows, Dave and I are still friends. We always will be. We've been through a ton together over the years, and work drama is certainly not going to get in the way of that friendship. Dave has an open invite to come on this pod anytime he wants. The problem is, Dave works for the company that I used to work for, and I highly doubt the geniuses that work at that company are going to allow him to come on my pod. Dave is great. He's welcome anytime. I don't let the business side of it interfere with the friendship side of it. And I think that that's good advice for anybody in any situation. Don't let work come between your personal relationships. Short answer, yeah, Dave's welcome anytime, but I don't think it's going to happen while he works for that company. This one is from Michelle. Scott, not sure if you've heard of Project Bluebeam, but that is why they are sprinkling alien things around everywhere now. It's the next plandemic. I believe we aren't alone in this world. But what the president's talking about with all this alien nonsense is the next psyop. Oh, Michelle. Oh, you want to go down that road, do you? Okay, let's have some fun with this one. Project Bluebeam. Anybody who wants to can Google that. If you want to look up what it means, it is a quote-unquote conspiracy theory that a lot of people believe. Donald Trump floating out the idea now that he's going to declassify all the files related to unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, UAPs, whatever. I feel like this is a big distraction. I feel like this is to take the heat off of whatever he's planning in Iran and the Epstein files. That's the way I see it. Is it a psyop? Well, listen, there's no shortage of governments and intelligence agencies that have used a psyop in the past. They create an emergency to make people rally behind the government and then give the government unprecedented power to overrule people's rights. That's what a psyop is, to make you think something is happening that's really not. It was actually planned. In fact, Michelle here uses the term plandemic. There's a lot of evidence in the Epstein files that Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates planned COVID, or they were part of the planning of COVID. And it was all to try and create a one world government or a new world order. I can't prove that, obviously, and there's other people going through the Epstein files that are doing great work exposing different things in those millions of documents. Eventually, the truth will come out. Is the government doing that again with these aliens? I don't know if it's a psyop. I don't know if they're planning something or if this really is, just like I said, a distraction. But either way, we need far more accountability from our leaders on the Epstein files, including Donald Trump. I'll just say that. This one is from Sarah. Scott, do you think Canada could ever cut ties with the monarchy? Would the monarchy ever be abolished? Just curious what others are thinking about this. Personally, I think they should be abolished and don't see the point in keeping them as head of state or us having a king or a queen. And I think a lot of younger generations are feeling that way too. Sarah, great note. Hey, Prince Andrew's POS, you know? There's some weird stuff surrounding King Charles. Is it time to abolish the monarchy? Is it time to say, you know what? Since we're talking about sovereignty anyway, maybe we don't need the king as our head of state. Maybe we don't need to keep paying the governor general almost $400,000 a year plus expenses, basically in all perpetuity, including the past governors general. Maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we should abolish the monarchy and just be a true democracy. I've got no problem with that. There was a time when I was really proud of our ties to the monarchy, really proud. But frankly, I've seen enough lately, particularly surrounding the Prince Andrew stuff, where I think it's worth having a conversation over. And that's something I think that should be put to a referendum. Last night in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith announced Alberta's having a referendum. 9 questions that the people of Alberta will be able to have their say on. Can I just tell you, it's another home run for Danielle Smith? God forbid a government allow the people to have a little say in how things are done. That's exactly what a referendum is. Let's ask the people. And she's putting a lot of questions on immigration, on the economy, etc. to the people. Sovereignty at the moment is not on that referendum ballot, but it could be if the organizers of the sovereignty movement can get enough signatures. That would be when they'll have that vote, and it's going to be in October. I think we should have a referendum on the monarchy, personally. I think that there's a lot of reform that we need in our system of governance, and getting rid of the monarchy is probably something we should ask the Canadian people about. Sarah, great question. Should we get rid of the monarchy? Hey, if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, I'd love to know what the public sentiment is. Just keep it quick if you want to slide into my DMs with a perspective. Do you think it's time to get rid of the monarchy, especially after what you've heard about Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein? I think it's something we got to consider. An anonymous one. Scott, let's say the people at Home Depot are pretty happy that Doug Ford couldn't come to the store. Retail workers get the shit end of the stick where holidays are concerned. He needs to back the hell off. Signed, all Ontario retail workers. Thank you for that. This is related to Doug Ford. I talked about him a lot in episodes this week. I encourage you to go back and listen because I don't know what happened with Doug Ford, but he is talking crazy talk, trying to compel workers to work on holidays, the cuts he made to OSAP rather than just fix the OSAP system. I'm hearing it so much. In fact, I got a lot of DMs still to come about Doug Ford and what he's been doing, and I can tell you, people are not happy. But if you stick around on this episode, you'll certainly hear more about it. And for the working class, I agree with you. We only have a few days a year on the calendar which are designated off, days when you cannot go shopping. And there's lots of advance notice. There is still some shopping available if you happen to need something and didn't prepare in advance, but I think we should hold our holidays sacred. I think they're important for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which is the working class are the ones who are keeping the whole operation going. We're the backbone of the country, and I think we need a couple of days off here and there beyond our actual vacation time. But good note from Rob. Scott, I'm not surprised that delusional Dougie Ford completely ignores those workers that he thinks are going to jump up and make time and a half on holidays. Will he be just as happy when they lose half of that extra income in taxes? That said, Scott, I managed a multi-million-dollar company for years. I've been managing large million-dollar contracts for even longer. The first thing any good businessman will tell someone is you need to make sure your best customers and biggest clients are happy with your agreements. If we take that in regard to Canada USA, why has nobody in the media or opposition not pressured the Liberals on this? Any business that would ignore their number one customer to instead run around the world chasing minnows is crazy. All the while, they continually berate the whale in the tank next to them. That business would be bankrupt or closed very soon. Canada is heading that way in a hurry, and sadly, nobody on the left seems to care. Rob, thank you for that. I think it speaks for itself. I don't need to add any commentary to that. There's a lot of people who feel that we are not doing our best to try and work out a deal with the Americans. People are making business decisions for emotional reasons, namely in that they don't like this situation or they just don't like Donald Trump. Well, at the end of the day, Trump is not going to be there forever, and we still need to take care of our best customer. A great note here. I appreciate that. This one from Tanya. Scott, I've been done with Doug Ford for years. He's an effing clown who needs to go away now. Education and healthcare. Cut, cut, cut. 70,000 kiddos waiting for funding. Who cares? Close one alcohol plant that had 200 employees and call the media. We need to take a stand. I'm starting to think that man has a problem with alcohol. His obsession is real. Tanya, I'm not here to defend Premier Ford, but I am led to believe that he does not drink alcohol. I know there's a lot of people who feel he's got an obsession with alcohol, and when it comes to alcohol, I think he's done some good things and bad. Good that he gave people more choice and allowed them different options to go and buy alcohol, making it available in corner stores, gas stations, things like that. That was meant to be a convenience thing, and honestly, I find it very convenient. But he's also done some terrible things, blocking Canadians from buying U.S. alcohol, tempting fate with the Americans like that, playing games with our alcohol industry. I just think it's dirty. I think when this is all said and done, because nothing's going to happen imminently, but when all this is said and done, there's no better reason than the way Doug Ford has acted over the last year, but to privatize the LCBO. It's the most lucrative industry on earth, and regular people should be allowed to own a liquor store, and they should be able to determine what they stock and how much they sell it for. We got to get rid of the LCBO and get it out of Doug Ford's hands because he's abusing it, and he's treating people like they're idiots. Doug Ford is deciding what you can and can't drink, and I am never going to be okay with that. This is from Mike. Scott, I was listening to your pod today and your segment on Premier Ford. It's intriguing to me that Ford's campaign for alcohol and crusade against Diageo has really come to define his tenure as Premier of Ontario. It amazes me that so much money has been spent fighting the U.S. and bullying Canadian corporations that are shifting operations, while his mayors waste such ridiculous amounts of money on projects like tiny homes in Hamilton. How Andrea Horwath, who, by the way, is the mayor of Hamilton, has managed to maintain power and squeeze out so much from taxpayers is lunacy and beyond me. If Ford wants a real crusade, he should focus on common sense spending here in Ontario rather than picking fights with Canadian corporations and U.S. foreign policy. If anything, he should be negotiating with these organizations to make business in Ontario more desirable, which would increase job offerings and stimulate our economy. The people of Ontario are squeezed dry. Very frustrating situation that we find ourselves in. Mike, thank you for that. I would love to see Premier Ford take on some of the waste and corruption that is happening at various city halls. In fact, it seemed like he was going to go down that road and do a major service for all taxpayers. Instead, you're right, he's picking fights with Canadian companies and ones that are kind of questionable to begin with. Doug Ford doesn't say boo at the vast majority of job cuts, including the federal government. But it was personal with Diageo, and he made it very, very plain and obvious to all of us that it was personal and that he was going to screw them. I think it was wrong, that shakedown he did of Diageo, and I think it's very wrong that he's not taking on the actual issues in Ontario. But he doesn't want to. Every time he pours out a bottle of Crown Royal, every time he goes off on a wild tangent about opening malls on holidays, he's not talking about healthcare and education and all the things that we expect our government to prioritize. Good note. Thank you, Mike. Okay, this one is from Andrea. Scott, when Doug Ford's trying to tell us what alcohol to drink, that is communism in a sense. My sister's husband comes from the former Yugoslavia. He knows socialism. People aren't seeing it, and it's blinding. I mean, they all tell lies, but this dude, Doug Ford, is too much. Let us choose what we want to drink. Yes, I enjoy California wine, and I'm saving my last 3 bottles as long as I can. When I go to San Francisco next year, I'm going to get them to ship me some. I don't care how much duty it's going to cost me. Great note. Yeah, I certainly get the frustration, Andrea. I think it's ridiculous how we're being treated as adults and taxpayers in this province, but I mean, let's be honest. There's really no other way to see it. Doug Ford is Donald Trump. If you don't like the approach that Donald Trump takes, you certainly cannot be happy with the approach that Doug Ford takes. It's the exact same thing. The sooner people realize that, the better. Unfortunately, the people who need to realize that are members of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus. How much longer do they want to get dragged because of bad decisions being made out of the Premier's office? I mean, they must realize their election prospects are on the line here, too. It's really just a matter of how much they're going to take from this guy. But I appreciate that note. This next one is anonymous. Hey, Scott, I have a piece of information for the OSAP portion of your listener DMs. It was much needed for me. I did not come from money, so it helped out a lot. I was one of the people who worked at Conestoga College and was laid off in the latter half of my career at Conestoga. We were approached by a few organizations who were working with the government of Ontario, trying to curb gambling among students. Some of the stuff Ford says is true. Students were gambling with their OSAP, and in many scenarios, spending it carelessly. We saw the result of that in the amount of freshman students within weeks or months of the school year starting that would turn to food programs, anything they could get their hands on, food banks, cash cards, etc. So I'm not surprised this was the end result. It was being abused. However, I do know there's thousands like myself who were depending on that funding in order to get a leg up in society. If you use this, please keep me anonymous. Thank you for that. And yes, of course, I will keep you anonymous if you ask me to. That's the thing, right? Doug Ford has thrown out the baby with the bathwater, and he's doing it probably because he's spending so much money recklessly in other areas. Let me give you an example. Doug Ford wanted to create the Ontario line, a new subway line in Toronto, and to his credit, it was much needed. His brother, Rob Ford, advocated for more subways. So Doug's going ahead and doing it, but here's the problem. They initially said it would be open in 2027. Now they won't even give a date. All they're saying is early 2030s. It's also gone from $11 billion to at least $27 billion. Is Doug Ford attacking students and chastising them over the career choices that they make because his subway has gone so far over budget? That could be part of it. He's obviously trying to figure out where he's going to get the money to fund his pet projects. He also wants to continue with the path of building that tunnel under the 401. I think it's crazy, personally, to try and fund his cost overruns on the backs of families and students. I can't see it any other way. But there's only so much money, and nobody wants to see their taxes go up. What's the compromise here? The compromise would have been to not overfund OSAP for the last number of years, knowing it was being abused, and then just take it away with no notice. The compromise would have been, and it involves hard work, so I guess I'm not surprised this government doesn't want to do it, but the compromise would have been to reform OSAP. There's lots of fail-safes that we could put in place to make sure that money is not being abused. There's some common sense policy we could put into OSAP. Let me give you an example there too. A lot of kids get OSAP funding partially to live in residence. Well, maybe OSAP should have said, hey, you live 15 kilometers from campus. No, we're not funding you moving out. If you've got a place to live now, you're good. Live at home and commute. That could have been a common sense proposal. We don't need to fund and partially fund through grants as well. Somebody who doesn't want to live under their parents' roof anymore and wants to live in res. Maybe, unless you actually need to live in res, that's a luxury that the taxpayers don't fund. Those are the kind of common sense things that we could have looked at to try and reform OSAP and make sure that taxpayers are getting exceptional value for money. Doug Ford didn't want to do that. He needs money for his subway, which has gone way over budget already, and he's taking it out on families and students. It's wrong. It's completely wrong, but it's not really a surprise. Anybody who's been paying attention to public education in Ontario knows this government doesn't seem to care. They really don't. They complain about people wasting money, but they're wasting more money than anybody, if you ask me. This one from Anonymous again. Hey, Scott, after your podcast the last couple of days in regard to Doug Ford's OSAP announcement, I just received a phone call poll about how I felt about the announcement. Timing's a little interesting. I bet there has been so much more blowback than he expected. Hope more people get it and can get their opinions known. As always, keep up the great pods. Love hearing your takes on the happenings. Thank you for that. I am not surprised to hear that the Ontario PCs are spending more money to do polling. Doug Ford comes out and opens his big mouth, pisses everybody off, and then they've got to go back and ask, well, do people actually support this? Here's the thing. I'm sure that if they phrase the question right and people don't really understand the issue, they could probably get a majority of people who took the poll to say, I agree with Doug Ford. But it doesn't make it right. He's still screwing people. It's not fair what he's doing to kids. Doing public opinion polls, I'll be surprised if the public is against him on this, but just keep in mind, if you as well have had enough of this guy, every one of these topics chips away a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more on people's general like of Doug Ford. At one point, he was the king. He could have walked down Yonge Street and shot somebody and still been reelected. But all of these things, they add up in people's heads. And when it comes time to vote in 3 years, I think people will have had enough. That's the way I see it going. Ryan says, on the topic of OSAP, Doug Ford is 100% lying about the families making $250,000 and getting OSAP grants. I'm a single father with 4 kids. My youngest started college last year. I make $125,000 a year. My ex doesn't have an income, and my daughter was not eligible for an OSAP grant last year. The full amount she received was all loan. Ryan, I'm sorry to hear that. But again, Doug Ford doesn't want to do the work to reform OSAP. He just wants to chastise kids for making poor choices, blame all of this waste on kids gambling and buying watches and cologne, and not look in the mirror about who created the problem. That's Doug Ford. From David. Geez, I think, let me just look ahead here. Unfortunately, a lot more of these are to do with Doug Ford. If you want to hear the rest of the Doug Ford stuff, by all means, stick around on this pod. If you're sick of hearing about Doug Ford, I don't blame you. Just keep in mind, I will be off this topic and onto something else on Monday. But these are the DMs that came in. People are passionate about this. This is from David. Doug Ford just makes people from Ontario hate Toronto even more. Family Day should be canceled because some spoiled Toronto people want to go shopping? ? You're the premier, Doug Ford, not Toronto. Get your head out of your ass and fix healthcare, schooling, and jobs. Your BS 2.5 times salary is really an extra 1.5, and it still gets taxed even heavier than normal pay. Let people be home with their families and stop taking care of your rich buddies that own the Eaton Center or some big franchise within it. You're corrupt and disgusting. Okay, not for me, but clearly a message for Premier Ford. This one from David. For Doug Ford and OSAP, I feel like they're tempering the waters to say Canada is broke. They're cutting OSAP loans first because the boomers won't care because they're unaffected. Then after that, Doug is going to tank the Conservative Party name, hoping the voters will associate the provincial government with federal candidates, so getting Liberals elected is more likely. I feel like they have the power with a potential majority to start the cuts to our pensions. Ooh, David, let's hope it doesn't get to that. If they start messing with people's pensions, it is game over. He continues, I feel like Doug Ford was actually the first to cross the floor. Seriously, when Carney went for his slumber party at Doug's cottage, did he leave his suitcase full of money to buy Doug off? I would argue Doug Ford doesn't have the prime minister's ambitions. Rather, he's getting a payout. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what went on there between Mark Carney and Doug Ford. I have no idea why there's been a change in posture in Doug Ford. I'll assume, giving him the benefit of the doubt, that he's still thinking about politics in the 80s where things were civil, and you should. It was actually encouraged and celebrated when you could get along with your opponent. I think he's thinking like that. The problem is the game has changed, and people are fed up with how our country is being run, particularly the middle class. And it's people who don't have a dog in the fight that really just want their entitlements that are screwing the rest of the country. This one is from a London, Ontario listener. Scott, I used to work at Home Depot in Cambridge. I now work at the one in London, which is the biggest theft store in Canada. Thank God I've got my family day off. Maybe Doug Ford should come to my Home Depot and try and stop some thieves. He'd be exhausted by the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, theft is a big problem. When the economy's bad, crime gets bad, and that's always been true. Doug doesn't seem to want to talk about that. When Doug Ford talks about crime, it actually makes his liberal buddies look bad. So he's not going to do that. He used to. He doesn't anymore. He touches on it. He's not beating that drum like he used to, and I assume that's for a reason. This one from Rob. Doug Ford. We can't spend billions on kids getting an education. Also, Doug Ford. We need to spend hundreds of billions building a tunnel instead of just buying back the 407. For anybody who did not hear, the 407 ETR, the toll road in Ontario, made an insane profit last year. They have to share their numbers, and in 2025, they made over $800 million in profit after over $2 billion in revenue, and they raised the rates on January the 1st. Doug Ford is totally fine with that. Doug Ford will tell you the Ontario economy loses $56 billion a year because of lost productivity, because of traffic gridlock. Well, the estimate is it would cost about $43 billion to buy back the 407 and either make it no toll or low toll so that people could actually use it and spread out the traffic so it's not all on the 401 or on arterial roads. He doesn't want to do it. He's not interested. He's got other interests, and he's prioritizing money on his pet projects. It makes so much sense to buy back the 407. He's not into it. This one is from Jason. The sooner people realize Doug Ford is not for the people, and he hasn't been, outside of taking away the speed cameras, the better. That's the only thing he did that helped the people of Ontario. I won't take that away from him, and I'll give credit where it's deserved. But outside of that, he's done nothing to help people in Ontario. We need him gone. All right, Jason, thank you for that. Mark says, first thing that needs to be said, Ford is an idiot. Instead of trying to fix the system, he's throwing the financial stress onto students and their families. Secondly, Mark Carney is literally throwing away money. I wish I could just talk to my landlord and say, no, I don't have the money right now. Let me go inside and print some more for you. Also, do people understand the difference between 1 million and 1 billion? This is getting ridiculous. Analogy time. 1 million seconds is about 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds is nearly 32 years. I don't understand how someone can spend money and not tell us where it's coming from or what exactly we're getting for it. People say it's putting our future children in financial debt. I would say the next 10 generations are going to be in financial debt because of the money and how it's being spent right now. Mark, great analogy. Thank you for that. And no, I don't know that people do understand. It wasn't that long ago that the government spending $1 million on something was a big deal. Now we don't even bat an eye when they want to spend millions on something. Now they're spending in the billions, and we just don't have it. We know that all of our inflationary pressures were caused by government printing money, and they continue to print money. It's crazy to think things are going to get any better when we keep doing things that we know don't work. Last one, and goodness, I am glad because, wow, I am getting even myself a little tired of hearing about Doug Ford. Scott, I've been listening to your podcast about Doug Ford. He is burning way too many bridges with Canadians and people in Ontario. I've been voting for him in every election, but now I'm not putting my trust in him anymore. Ever since Mark Carney came to office, Doug has been different. He's no longer for the people. He is all for himself. Great perspective, everybody. I want to thank you for taking the time to slide into my DMs. I appreciate you listening to this episode as well. I'm going to promise you that I read as many DMs as I could about all of the topics. 80% of the messages this week were about Doug Ford. But no matter what, come Monday, I'm going to try and pivot and get on to other stuff. I'm looking forward to the semifinal hockey game today and then the gold medal game on Sunday. Go Canada, go. Let's make this a weekend about Canadian pride. I know there's a lot of people suffering for a lot of different reasons. It feels like our country is broken, but we can still love the country we live in despite the direction it's going in. And I think this is a moment for pride and for unity and celebrating some great traditions that we have here in Canada that are mainly based in winter sports. And that's what I'll be watching this weekend. Have yourselves a great one. I'll be back on Monday with a new episode of Scott Box After 9. And as always, I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and the whole truth. Hey now, have a great weekend.